Okay, so I did my book report on Volume 1 of the Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes by Neil Gaiman. It was just like the first 8 comics in the whole series. But the Sandman is like, it starts off with this man retrieving this book from a museum, and he tries to perform this ritual to get death. Well, it doesn't work. He does not get death. He ends up getting Dream instead. And he just entraps Dream in like a bubble with all these like runes and all this stuff going on that like can't be disturbed. And Dream ends up being trapped in this bubble for like years. Like the guy who captures him grows old, dies. His son watches over him, trying to get Dream to give him like powers and immortality. But eventually, like everyone in like, it's kind of like a cult. Everyone in this cult is like a bunch of white dudes, and they've now all grown old, and all their young members have left, and no one new has joined. So eventually, like, they get sloppy, and Dream ends up escaping, and he ends up cursing the sun to be able to never wake up. Well, then Dream is very weak because he's been entrapped for like 60 years, and he has to go. He ends up going back to his realm, and his realm is in ruins. People have disappeared. His objects have gotten stolen over the years. And he has to go and retrieve these objects because he made them when he first came to power. So it has parts of his soul like embedded in them. So he goes on these adventures to go and retrieve these objects, going from like what he presumes to be the easiest like task to like the hardest task. He has to go get his sand from a mortal, like bag of sand from a mortal. He has to go get his crown from a demon in hell. He has to go get his amulet that was being held by like the Justice League in their storage, and ends up coming across like the villain that had gotten the amulet in the first place. And once he retrieves all this, even though he's at full power, he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's like, I have all my powers back, but like I know I need to rebuild my land, but I don't feel better. I don't feel fulfillment. And his sister, Death, ends up coming, and she's like, yo, well, why didn't you ever get in contact with me, like all sisterly and stuff, and being like super protective? And she's like, you're being dumb. She just kind of drags him around while she's like claiming all these dead souls and sending them to like where they need to go. And he's just like, you know what, she's right, like I am being dumb. And he does something like really strange and weird that I don't really understand like what exactly happened at the end, and it makes me want to get volume 2 because I'm like, what just happened? But like it's really good. It's a little strange because a lot of things that he faces, he kind of gets by pretty easily, but also like, I don't know, it's still pretty good. Like, I liked chapter 7. Chapter 6 was very intense. But the way that this relates to McCloud and like the art of comics is, well, in a few ways. For icons, for the purpose of the like to represent a person, place, thing, or idea. Well, you're talking about Dream, the Sandman, like Morpheus. He goes by so many different names, and it's just kind of like pulling a whole bunch of different folklore and like myths around like these ideas, and these like him, his sister, like all his other siblings, like Destiny and everything, they're all in the embodiment of these ideas and these beliefs. So there's a ton of symbolism throughout the whole thing, like the bag of sand, like that we know in like the song and the myth and everything around Sandman. Like Death has the Egyptian symbol, but also in like the way of like less common ideas, just trying to portray things, like in the dream realm when Dr. Destiny follows him there, and he's trying to like haunt him and confuse him so that way he doesn't like try to find Dream and kill Dream. He puts his helmet on all these like people to just kind of like work as a nightmare and kind of confuse him, which is why I have that first image. But also with this last image, like with the purple outline and the swirly gray white like image, it's like clearly meant to be a portal. Like I feel like that's a pretty common way that portals are portrayed in the media today, is like some sort of solid outline or color. Sometimes it can be just total swirling like edgeless mess, but oftentimes there can be like a border, and then just like an unclear like image in the middle that someone just like climbs through, and then it just kind of like closes up. So it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of imagery throughout the whole comic, and I'm sure if I studied like the whole thing, I'd find loads more. Sorry, my cat's attacking my feet. Like objectifying power, the way that like detailed can be used to draw meaning and texture and weight to an object, like his amulet. In some scenes, it's literally just like a red blob. Oftentimes, it's just like a little stone with some definition. But then when they want to get like this close-up, detailed image of the stone, like drawing in power and its lines and its imperfections and the way that the light shimmers off it and the way that's been changed and modified and the way that just like works up close to give it like texture and to make it so it's not just some like, they want you to feel close to this object. They don't want it to be some disconnected thing where if it was just this red weird shape the whole time, you might not like hold on to it solidly. Like it needs to be solid. So closure. I realized I should not have separated these images. These were next to each other in a page, which is like the block in the middle. But just the way, like in this scene, we know that this character just shot someone and that they're dead, because like him saying, well, I don't suppose it would have made any difference either way. That wording makes you like, you're like, oh, he wasn't ever gonna not kill this person. But also like the image of the gun with like the bullet having already gone out, which you see with the lines and like the blood splatter back out. We can connect the dots that someone was just killed in that scene, if not at least badly wounded. I put my image over that, but it says motion. But yeah, just like the use of motion lines is very interesting in this. I liked it with the witches, which is this, like, they're kind of the fortune tellers, the women who like work with the strings of destiny. He ends up talking to them to find out, like, to try and get help. But the way that they kind of like swirl into presence here and their faces are kind of warped together. The warping of the second image of the guy's jaw, he's actually like falling from the sky. So kind of just like that slack jaw, like warping, like falling motion. I'd probably like move the jaw so it's up since he's like falling from high depths, but like, I don't know, it's just kind of cool. The movement lines of like the guy going forward in the first image, which with his hand growing bigger, to show that's more in the foreground, and like the movement lines making him look kind of like he bounced off the ground. It's kind of cool. And of course, like the simplicity of like the car string lines behind the back of the car. But yeah, so there's motion lines in a lot of scenes in this comic, like we already saw with the gun. I probably could have pulled a lot more images. Color, the like way that in those first two images you have the red from the amulet, but also that uses like black and white to show like back in the like normal world, back where it's not currently at, just showing like another location. The green to show like the goop. Sandman is always like black and like more monotone colors. The red of the sky and hell, showing it like that's not our realm. The light blue like swirl of his magic. The last image, the yellow behind the crazy man, is kind of a pop. And it's not super noticeable like here, but it's actually him as a scarecrow, which comes up in a later chapter, which is really cool. But yeah, I think mainly the hardships for like performing this comic would be the fact that like, I don't know, it's very interesting. I'm kind of thinking of just kind of doing a monologue situation of him telling the tale of what's happened to him. I kind of played with doing like color and costume already, like currently for this recording, just to see what kind of effects I could get. But yeah, I don't know, this comic is really cool. It'd be fun to kind of tell about certain scenes that I thought were really interesting or creepy. So, I don't know. I'm excited, and I'm slightly over time, but thank you.